Revelers. This is Off the Rails, Right versus Left, the podcast that we do because we think the left is evil. I'm Rob B.
And I'm Brad Lee.
And I'm Brian G.
And we are Off the Rails, Right versus Left. Again, we're doing this show because we think everybody needs to know that the left is evil. Welcome, revelers. I'm here in studio today with the big man, Brian G, in the house once again.
Yo, coming to you live from RB Studios.
Something like that. Anyway,
it's
so
a working day.
Yeah, welcome to my little studio here. Okay, so obviously there's a lot going on over in Israel, and then there's an interesting amount of talk about like whose lands Israel really is. So I thought we should get into that a little bit today.
Well, whether the Jews actually belong in Israel, or
well,
if it should be
something
the
like that.
Muslim, or
okay. So obviously the Israelites, they spring up from the Canaanites, which go way back, approximately 2,000 years. Okay, but the first references to Israel pop up around 1208. So it's an ancient Egyptian,
which I heard 10,000 BCE.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about the actual term for Israel.
Yeah.
It's 1208. Okay, so we can at least go that far back, 1208. Okay, and then around the 11th century, you had the United Market, because first they were tribal, and then they were ruled over the judges in time of crisis.
Yeah.
And then around the 11th century, that's when they established a monarchy.
Yes.
So we had King Saul, King David, King Solomon, and
they were descended from.
Right. So, and then they eventually split off the north, Judah.
Yeah.
And
Judea.
then So Judah. Now that precedes like there being anything called Judea. Judah was the northern kingdom of Israel, and
I had switched those around. I thought Judea was the southern kingdom, and Israel
no. Judah was the northern kingdom, and so it is actually the first one around 720. Israel and Judah were separate kingdoms by 900, and then 720 is conquered by the Assyrian Empire.
Yeah.
So the Assyrian Empire spread across like most of Arabia. Right, so we're talking all the way over to Persia. Okay. So the Jewish revolts against the Babylonians caused them basically destroy Judah. So that's when the northern part of Israel was destroyed.
Yeah.
And then the Babylonians ended up coming in around the 500 BCE. And Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem. And it's around that time that they exiled the Jews. So
yeah, the Babylonians spread the Jews throughout Babylon.
Mm-hmm. And it's considered all the way through the Bible. Now, what's interesting is it's around this time that is the first time that we get to hear the word Palestine. Because it was originally from an Egyptian word for basically like neighboring lands.
Yeah.
So, and then the Greek historian Herodotus was the first one to write the word Palestine everywhere. So that's where the word Palestine came from. Now,
which has nothing to do with the people. It just has
it just meant that it was
next to Egypt.
Yeah, it was just the land next to Egypt. And but it's interesting that the first argument is that was the Palestinians people's land. Well, the word Israel came out in 1208 to describe the lands of Canaan and Judah. And then, 700 years later is the first mention of the word Palestine.
To describe the Israeli land.
Right. To describe the Israeli land after the Jews were forcibly removed from the area And
Not for the last time.
yeah, not for the last time. So let's see here. And then there's a lot of history about the during the exile during the time of um, the Babylonian,
Yeah.
enslavement.
After Babylon enslaved them and spread them throughout Babylon.
Right. So Babylon fell and became the Achaemenid Empire, and Cyrus, the king of Persia, allowed the Jews to return to Judah. And
yeah, not to go reconquer Jew, but just to move back in
mm-hmm.
because it was their land already.
Right. So yeah, so it was ended up being called the Return to Zion. So like, and we're still at this point, there's still no Palestine.
No.
None.
Well, yeah, anyone who knows history knows that.
Right. So then they get back and they make the second temple.
Yeah.
Right. Now this whole area like runs up let's see here. I guess it's to my history's so out of order here. Bad notes. Okay. So now during this whole time, of course, the Israels became more and more monotheistic, like the land of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And for the Arabs, like there was no such thing as Islam.
No, they came much later.
So they were all Jews.
They came much later.
Yeah. So let's see, where is I bounced around my tabs and I lost where I was at. Okay. So scroll here.
The Muslim religion, is one of the newer religions.
Right. So around the 5th century to the 4th century, Egypt managed to get out from the Persian Empire, and it wasn't too much longer before the Roman period became like. I mean, there's a lot going on in the area.
The
like,
Roman Empire expands,
yeah, the Macedonians and the Greeks, and everybody kept fighting over this area. So one empire after another kept conquering the area. So Israel was never able to like fully reform because they were constantly invaded. And then I guess it was the Maccabean revolt kind of broke them away from the Greek emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Judah Maccabee led that revolt. And let's see, that kind of led to like a new like emergence of Israel at that time. Okay.
Jewish people.
Now, I'm not a historian. Like, I've just read up on the history a little bit. So if I like mix up a little bit here, it's because I'm like trying to like go through notes and like make sure that I get it all right. Okay. So I guess it was around 63 BCE.
Yeah, sounds right.
Like so
the
like
Romans came in.
Yeah, the Romans came in, and there was a problem of succession.
Mm-hmm.
And Pompey the Great like went in and he sacked Jerusalem and installed a new leader there. And like from that time going forward, it was under the Roman rule. Okay. Which is kind of like the period of time where it started being referred to as Syria and Palestine. So still no Palestine.
Yeah.
It's Syria and Palestine. Okay. So this went on until like the 3rd century.
Yeah, after the Eastern and Western Roman
right, and then it went
Empire
into the
split.
then it went into the Byzantine Empire, and
Byzantine,
like
yeah.
um the Christian culture began spreading, and then we ended up with all the Crusades. But basically, it went back and forth. The Arabs would conquer the land, the Christians would conquer the land. The Arabs would conquer the land, the Christians would conquer the land. Now, in all of these wars, like the Jews continued and the Israelis continued, Israelites had to continue to flee their land. And then they try and make it back, and then they'd flee and they'd make it back, and they'd be taken slaves and sent off to other parts of the world.
Well, you know, one interesting thing is if the Muslims had stopped in
Yeah,
the
so like
Middle
around
East in
around the
Israel,
600s
if
is
they
when
would have
the
stopped there, they probably would have held it and they'd still be there. But they were moving into Europe and taking, they took over. They were moving into Spain, moving to the west across Europe, and that's what started the Crusades. Was the Roman Catholic Church calling for the Crusades to stop the spread of the Muslim faith into Europe.
right. Okay, so as the Muslims like took over, it was Umar conquered the Palestine area
Yeah,
and kind of split it up to where you had a Palestina Prima district, Palestina Tertia. So at this point, they're using, because they came through and were like cleaning up the back end um, of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and so they're using their terminology now. Okay, so then they're like breaking it up, and it was like the most successful part of the caliphate at that part. But again, this is new religion comes in, conquers it. Now they did actually lift all the restrictions that the Romans had put on Jews.
yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. But it's because like at the time, like as the Quran's being formed, like most of the history that's accredited as Arab history, um, Muhammad took directly from the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is initially some due respect for the Jews because they're considered parts of the same people. Now, how it jumped to later saying that Jews are
devil.
demons and not people, that's another story altogether.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like going forward from here, like it ends up being one caliphate after another, conquering the area and taking it over. And then you hit the Crusades around 1000. And then you got Europe coming in and conquering it. And then the Arabs take it back over. And then,
Which
yeah,
the whole time the Jews were still there, living in the land.
yeah. But the numbers continue to dwindle.
Yeah.
And now the Jerusalem like was the stronghold against the Crusaders because of the walls that they had built surrounding it. But eventually, the Crusaders did manage to overtake most of it. And by this time, the whole area of Syria and Palestina had like 1,000 Jewish families, and that was it. That was all that was left.
Yeah, they had pretty much been wiped out.
The rest of the Jews were wiped out or spread around the world.
It was all Christians and Muslims, except for the small minority of Jews.
Right. So, then like you get jump forward to the 13th century, and they're trying to. Well, then you're looking at the Mongol invasions.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and their army reached the area in like 1260. And so like, yeah, so then the Mongols are trying to conquer it.
I wonder what the Jewish numbers grew to by the time the Mongols came through.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have that information.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'm just curious. I have to look that up later.
Yeah, and then the Mongols actually held Jerusalem for 4 months. And it was like the 9th Crusade that knocked them out.
Yeah.
And then ended up being part of the Damascus based sultanate, the Mamluk Sultanate, and it had capitals in Jerusalem, Gaza, and Safed. Okay, So, let's see here.
Still no Palestinians.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, like now the Syrian Palestina is being considered Palestine and Syria.
Yeah.
So now they're kind of referring to the areas separately. Then or late 15th century, in come the Ottomans.
Yeah, the 1400s.
Right. So the Ottoman Turks trying to take over Western Asia go through and they conquer it all. And Greater Syria is what they called it, was ruled from Damascus. And the Palestinian region was divided into Safed, Nablus, Jerusalem, Layjun, and Gaza. And so, like, it was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. See, what would that be? All the way up to...
Well, the Ottoman Empire lasted until what, World War One?
Yeah.
When they finally were conquered and taken down. Because they were.
Well,
on the wrong side of the war.
there was still more going on, because there continued to be, different sultanates would pop up and try and conquer the area.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a site of like constant war.
Yes.
But there was like no consolidated Palestinian people. Okay.
No.
So then you get to like, modern history and like in the 1800s. After Alexander the Third, like, basically passed laws, basically targeting Jews, then the Jews in Europe started getting more organized, and the first
actual full-fledged target of just
Yeah.
Jews, because they were Jews.
And in 1897, that's when Zionists started like organizing,
Yeah.
and like trying to like make themselves a people again, and they started the movement to restore the Jewish homeland.
Yeah.
Now, notice they didn't say they were going to go take over a country.
No,
they were trying to
gonna go back
reestablish their homeland.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the Balfour Declaration was a public statement by the British government in 1917. During World War One.
Yeah.
To support the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, who continued to call it Palestine, which was, a combination like of that word meaning neighboring country,
yeah.
and like seized on because it was very close to the Jews' historical enemy, the Philistines.
Mhm.
So they like seized onto it too. And so and at that point it was like the small like part of the Ottoman Empire
Mhm.
that had like a Jewish community, like a small one, but there was like the one area that there was like a Jewish community. Okay. So after World War One, the League of Nations,
Oh boy.
yeah, they assigned Britain, because Britain was in control of the Middle East at that point.
Talk about a screwed up organization.
Yeah, but they assigned the creation of mandatory Palestine, which was the whole area there. Yeah. And there was riots, because at this point, like, they're trying to re-implement a homeland for the Jews, because they've been exiled for, at this point, like 800 years.
Yes.
900 years.
I was going to say closer to 1,000, but yeah.
Right. So the riots broke out between the Palestinians and the Jews over access to the wall. So later called the Wailing Wall, I believe.
Yes.
So then, of course,
that's where you really first start seeing the Palestinian people.
Right. So before the creation of the Israeli state, recreation, World War II happened. And we all know what happened there. Millions and millions and millions of dead Jews. They were being hunted down all across Europe. And we're not even going to get into World War II today, although we should do a show on World War II at some point too. Okay.
We should do a show starting with World War One, how it moved into World War II.
So after World War II, there was the official United Nations plan for Palestine, which called for the division of Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state in the area. Now, mind you, where did all these Arabs come from?
There's Egypt, there's Syria, there's the Arabs from
Iran, because it
Iran.
was the
Yeah, the
Persian
Arabs from
Empire.
Iran, the Persians,
Turkey, because they're Ottoman Turks.
Turkey, yeah.
Okay, so none of these people were actually Palestinian. They were all people from all these other countries. Okay, but like there was no Palestinian people at this point. Okay, so it would be like, you know, everybody like moving to an area and then like saying that's who you are, is you're the land that you stole. Like, wait, kind of that's what Americans do, isn't it?
I wasn't gonna say it,
But it is. But it is. I mean,
kinda
it's
how
the
the U.S.
reality.
became. Europe spread into North America and then
Exactly.
created the United States and started saying, "Well, it's our land."
Right, but like at least here,
Yeah.
like arguably they should have more, but the native tribes do have land
Do
that's
still have their own
specifically
lands,
the
yeah.
native land.
Native tribes, yeah,
Yeah.
except up in Alaska.
They have native land.
There's
They have
no.
entire villages that are theirs.
They have villages, but they're not tribal lands. There's no tribal lands.
Right.
in
They
Alaska.
instead they have the native corporations.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're those are.
That's
big,
another
big,
that's
yeah.
another show. Native corporations and the permanent fund dividend in Alaska.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so this little like uprising ended up like kicking off like the civil war in the Palestine area. And like Ben Gurion ended up declaring independence for the state of Israel. Okay. So in 1948, the British mandated Palestine expired. Okay.
But let's just clarify though, the Jews weren't all Europeans.
Mm.
They're Middle Easterns.
Yeah. Actually, hundreds of thousands of them actually were in Arab
Yeah.
lands.
Yeah.
And
so they were living in Iraq, Iran.
Yeah, and the governments in these
Egypt.
Arab places,
Yeah.
like when people started moving there, forcibly relocated a lot of Israelis or a lot of Jews to the new Israel
Yeah.
area.
They said, "Hey, here's a chance for us to get the Jews out of our area and put them in their own, you know."
Right. So once again, they're being
Yeah.
forcibly like transported,
Yeah.
by people that didn't want them in their lands, and the Arabs who haven't liked the Jews for like 400 years or like 500 years at this point are like, hey, this is a great way to get rid of all these Jews.
Yeah.
And so they did. That was their goal. Okay. So they started like moving the Jews to Israel, and a lot of people from like a lot of Jews from Africa and Europe and North America started going there. And then hours after the expiration of the British mandate for Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria invaded Israel.
Yep.
Okay. So basically, right after the Declaration of Independence, every single Arab state tried to destroy them because they figured they'd concentrate all the Jews in one spot and they could wipe them out in one blow. Unfortunately for the Arab states, Israel whooped their ass and sent them all running.
Thank God.
Okay. So they ended up creating the first government in 1949. And they like had the first like armistice agreements that ended it, and like so the territory at this part of Israel looked like kind of like Israel is now, but minus Gaza,
Palestine,
and the West Bank.
Yeah.
Okay. The West Bank was controlled by Jordan, which at the time was Transjordan. And the Gaza, the West Bank.
Yeah.
And then the Gaza and the Gaza Strip was ruled by Israel because it's basically on the Sinai. Okay. So then you fast forward again, and like at this point, like the UN resolution was passed, like mandating first Israel was admitted, and like the mandate was still there in place to make Israel and or a Jewish and a Arab state.
Yeah.
Now, reminder, the Arabs refused it. Not the quote unquote Palestinian people. All the surrounding Arab countries refused it and then attacked. And then they ended up with all the quote Palestinian people. But instead of allowing them to settle where they were at, they put them into camps.
Yeah.
Jews didn't put them into camps. There
So
are
the
no
Muslims
there
did.
are no Arab camps in Israel. All the Arab camps are in the Arab countries because they don't want the people, and by keeping them as permanent refugees, they can use them as a political point against Israel. Okay? So 1950, the legislature in Israel passed the law of return, allowing all Jews to return and have citizenship in Israel. Okay? So where are we at?
Yeah.
Okay, so during all this time going up to the 60s, like they had constant attacks on the Jews by the Arabs that were allowed to stay in the area. Okay. Now the Israelis were trying to like live peacefully with them, but they kept getting attacked, and eventually the Israeli Arabs were put under a state of martial law. And then they ended up lifting it in what 1966. And then what happened? 1967, another war. So the Egyptians were preparing to attack, right? With the help of Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, when they signed the ceasefire, Israel is now in control of the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, and then the Jordanian West Bank and East Jerusalem. So now they control all of this area.
Yes.
Okay. Which exceeds what was ever in like the original mandate for Israel. That's 100% true. Okay. So,
which Israel honestly didn't want that land.
mm-hmm.
They had it because of the war and to basically create a buffer between them and the other Arab states.
Right. So
who constantly were attacking them up to that point.
Now, from this point on, the Arab countries forced the Arabs that they called Palestinians to live in camps, even though those people were Jordanian, Syrian, Egyptian, Lebanese,
Iranian.
They forced them to live in the camps and demanded that Israel take them back. Now, mind you, these are people that helped attack the nation of Israel. So they like when somebody tries to destroy you, you don't let them come live with you. Like that would be stupid. Okay. But from this point on, there's not a single day in Israeli history the Jews were not attacked in Israel. Not a single day.
Man, if that happened anywhere else, that country would be gone.
So, and anyway, so then there was the Camp David Accords, which was the framework for an independent West Bank and Gaza Strip, and the withdrawal of the Israeli forces. Egypt signed a peace treaty, right? And then let's see here.
Which the now Palestinian people have refused every time it's been put up.
Right. So where is like I'm trying to find like because now we're rolling into
1970s.
Well, I'm trying to like Yasser Arafat was the leader at that time, right?
In the 70s?
Like the 80s. Yeah, Camp David Accords. Yeah, he would have been by the time they got to the 80s, 90s. We're talking about Yasser Arafat and let's see. I made all these notes, but my notes weren't. I should have made him in the podcast so I'd have them better together. So, anyway, so at this point, like now, mind you, like I told you, like from the end of the second Israeli war.
So he was born in 29, died in 2004.
Right. No, but he was the one involved in the Camp David Accords.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the Palestinians were offered a state, and they chose instead terrorism and to reject having a country. So, and then, so like later, 1994, there was 1993, there was the Oslo Accords. Mm-hmm. And some of the Israeli forces withdrew from the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah, he was president from 89 until 2004 when he passed.
Yeah. So, and then Jordan in 94 had the peace treaty that defined those borders. Okay. So then you get to 2000, Israel finally withdrew like the last of their forces from Lebanon, which of course what happens, it ends up falling to the terrorist organization Hezbollah. And Hezbollah start doing cross-border raids.
Iran.
So as soon as they give up an area that they were controlling to protect themselves, that area is used to attack them.
Hezbollah is excuse me.
Okay. So then they started making, in 2002, they started making the barrier on the West Bank. And then in 2005, they withdrew from Gaza.
Yeah, they completely left Gaza.
So they completely left.
For them to rule themselves.
Okay. So now you got, like, the West Bank's been separated. Gaza's been separated and completely withdrawn. Right?
Yeah, no.
So what do you get?
Israeli soldiers. Absolutely.
Cross-border attacks from Hezbollah.
Every day.
Which led to the Lebanon War in 2006. Now, mind you, that's not counting the rocket attacks that have still been going on daily.
Yeah.
And they go on to this day.
Every day. Yeah.
Every day, at least one rocket flies into Israel from surrounding territories.
Yeah, we've been saying for years that if that was Mexico launching rockets in the U.S., it wouldn't be happening anymore.
Right. So, then 2012, like after a bunch of Hamas attacks, Israel ran an 8-day anti-Hamas operation in Gaza because there was tons of rocket fire coming in from the Negev.
Yeah.
And then there was 2014, another Israel-Gaza conflict. Okay. So now, mind you, at this point, we're now talking what? 12 years, Hamas has been in control of the Gaza Strip, and Israel continues having to go in, clear out rockets, clear out tunnels, clear out all this crap, because instead of trying to do things to improve life for their people, Hamas just wants to destroy Israel, so they keep attacking.
Well, they could have made that into a new UAE.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot they could have done. They had billions of dollars in aid, and they just use it to keep attacking Israel.
Well, from Israel, from the U.S., from England, it keeps pouring in.
Right. So, and then, and they still stayed out for the most part. It was primarily just airstrikes. Then Trump became president in 2016. Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
It's about time.
They recognized their sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And the reason that Israel retained control of the Golan Heights, anytime they didn't control it, rockets were fired from the Golan Heights into pretty much the rest of Israel, because from there you can hit all of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you get 2021 and another like big protest that caused another crisis. And Now, of course, then the Abraham Accords go into effect. Israel's starting to make peace with the rest of the Arab world, and yet they continue to get attacked and have to go in, clean up the bombs, clean up the rockets, and then we shoot to what, October 7th. You get the huge attacks. Now, mind you, Israel exercises extreme patience when they're attacked daily from Palestinian-controlled territories, from Hezbollah-controlled territories, from Syria,
Houthi.
where like
The Houthi.
from the Houthis also over in Yemen. So like they're still putting up with this and just going in making targeted strikes. Okay, but then the events of October 7th, 1,143 killed, 250 hostages, babies decapitated, women raped, bodies burned,
Babies put in
paraded
ovens.
through the street,
Yeah.
to the cheers of Gaza. And then on the 8th, Hezbollah starts attacking northern Israel and Golan Heights. So that's what, and it took 3 weeks. They tried to like handle this, get the hostages back, whatever. They wouldn't give them back. In they go, full force. Now, Hezbollah is a terrorist group who's embedded through the whole,
controlled by Iran.
yeah, and they are in control of Lebanon.
Yeah.
So Iran has a proxy government in Lebanon. They have a proxy government in Gaza Strip. They have a proxy government in Yemen. And even though they don't technically have the proxy government in Syria, Assad wouldn't be in power if it wasn't for Iran and Russia.
Yeah.
So he's going to do what he's told too. So he's facilitating getting these weapons to all these territories. Okay. So back to usual, Israel is surrounded by their enemies. Okay. But this is an Israel that has existed since
Thousands
like
and
2000,
thousands of
like
years.
I mean before like 1200 BC, it was the Canaanites, which are arguably the Jewish people. Like, I mean, that is the Jewish people. But
all the way back
the
to
actual
10,000
term
BC.
Israel came out in 1200. So this is what, 3,000 years of history. The Arabs controlled it for like 600 years.
Yeah, a few hundred years.
Out of that, spread out disparately, because when the Mongols controlled it, they didn't control it. When the Greeks controlled it, they didn't control it. When the Romans controlled it, they didn't control it. When the Babylonians, those were Arabs, but it was pre-Islam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, a couple of things I want to point out, because
Mhm.
everybody's always saying that the Jews are white. Most Jews are not white. They're not what we call Caucasians.
Well, because they're literally relatives of the Arabs.
Yeah, they're Arabs. They're
like they were supposed to be the two.
They're Middle Eastern.
Yeah,
They're
they were
not
the
from
two
Europe.
children of the or the two
Oh,
children of
yeah.
Abraham or some shit like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, and Israel is one of the only governments in the Middle East that have Jews and Muslims living together, and Muslims serving in some of the highest positions of power in their government.
yeah, the only place where in the entire Muslim world where Arabs have full freedom and rights
Yeah.
is in Israel.
Which is, I believe, they're called the Druish.
Mm.
Is the
That's a different group.
well, but they are an offshoot of the Muslims.
No, it's a different group.
Okay, well, I think you should read up on that. But
No, I think you should read up on
I
it.
think you should read up on that. But I'm just saying that what other Muslim country can you say that Jews live in? The
None.
Jews serve in high positions of power.
None. Because
And how much land does the Muslims control?
the Jews, they have
The
one
Muslims.
country.
The
The Muslims have like 42 countries.
I mean, going through northern Africa all the way over to
Asia.
Spain, right to the border of Spain. They have going into Asia. Uh, yeah, so there is a lot of Muslim territory that they took over by force. But there's only one place that the Jews live, and it's their ancestral homeland that they've lived in for thousands of years, that they've been kicked out of several times and then moved back into. And they live there with the Arabs. But what else you got?
Nothing. The Druze is not a Jewish religion or
I
an
didn't say it was
Arab, or a
Jewish
Muslim
religion.
religion, but they're Arab.
I didn't say they were Jewish.
So not a lot's known about their religion because they're kind of like some of the other cults that don't allow people to know their stuff. But the attacks that were just carried out by Israel were because these people lived on Israeli territory, and 12 of them were killed by Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Okay. No other country in the world would be attacked for 70 years and not just destroy their enemies completely.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always this like acting like in this one, everybody calls for a proportional response. Why would you have a proportional response when even a disproportionate response doesn't change what happens? So it's at the point now where Israel just needs to destroy their enemies. Okay, which means you just destroy every fighting age man in Gaza, period, because they are all terrorists, every last one of them. You avoid killing women and children
as much as you can.
But every fighting age man, done. And like they teach kids from 12 on to go and kill Jews.
That.
Well, no, I mean that's when they actively start sending them to go kill men.
Yeah, because they're teaching them from basically birth.
They teach them hate from birth.
Yeah.
But what you have to understand, everybody who's been born in the last 20 years in the Gaza Strip has been born under Hamas. They've been told to hate and kill Jews from the day they were born.
They play games of slaughtering Jews.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, they're all combatants. So when you deduct the males from the casualty list, it's a lot lower. But even like they say it's 30,000, but something like 16,000 Hamas actual fighters, like claimed fighters, have been killed. So it's like 14,000. That's more than 1 for 1. No other countries achieve that in war where they only kill one civilian for every soldier that they kill.
I don't understand how the media keeps pulling these numbers from Hamas reports.
Yeah, of course.
The Hamas has lied about every single thing they've ever, all the information they've ever given has always been a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you keep believing them and pulling your information from reports they keep giving you, and every other report has always been proven to be a lie?
Well, it just remains that they're a fake people with a fake cause out to destroy the nation of Israel, out to destroy the Jewish people, out to commit genocide from the river to the sea, which means from the banks of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which would kill 90% of the Jews on this planet.
Yep.
Their goal, they get accused of genocide. Their goal is genocide. Okay? They're not trying to kill the Palestinian people. If they wanted to, they would have.
If Israel wanted genocide, there would be nobody alive in Gaza right now.
Now, you do have Palestinian leaders bragging about how good of human shields their civilians are. So, who's responsible for killing the civilians? The Palestinians.
When you have such a packed-in area,
Hamas.
And they're forcing their people to
Palestinian
stay
Authority.
On top of their
Palestinian Authority still gives money to anybody who manages to kill a Jew.
Yep.
Hamas trains people to strap bombs to themselves and blow up kids. Their target are kids. They are a terrorist organization. The PLO is the PLA, the Palestinian Authority.
Mm-hmm.
They're a terrorist organization. They're funded by a terrorist state in Iran, and it'll never stop unless Israel completely takes it over. I think Israel has a plan for afterwards, but their initial plans were, hey, Egypt, you control Gaza, Jordan, you control the West Bank. None of them want them.
Yeah,
because
won't turn it
these
down.
are people that they trained in
Walked
to be
away.
radical killers, and Lebanon almost fell to Palestinian refugees. Syria had to fight the Palestinian refugees. Jordan had almost got overthrown by the Palestinian refugees. These people are violent people that were trained to be terrorists, and like the actual like quote unquote Palestinian people never existed, and if they did, they've long since stopped existing. Because we're talking like what, 80 years later? Well, y'all claim that the people are dying in like 20 years in the camps, then where are all the people coming from? So it's all bullshit. So anyways,
Turkey.
yeah, so that's
Iran,
so yeah, we can talk about Turkey threatening to invade and how ridiculous that is. I mean,
Turkey should have been kicked out of NATO a long time ago.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the actual history of Israel and Palestine. Palestine just meant lands neighboring Israel, and the name stuck because the later rulers of it loved sticking it to the Jews and thought it was from the word Philistines, which were their biblical enemies.
Yeah.
So that was the reason the Europeans kept it. The Arabs kept it because it was the word meaning neighbor. So that's it. That's all we got. I hope you guys enjoyed the little history lesson. Sorry, I was a little disorganized. I made a whole lot of notes in a short period of time and tried to get it all together. But I appreciate you guys for watching. If you want to help us out with what we're doing, our merch store is down on the bottom. It's called Warmonger Shop because that's the merch shop for my gaming channel. But it's also the merch shop for this channel. I just need to get more merch on there that relates to this channel. So appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great evening. And this is Rob B. and Brian G.
And Brian G.
signing out.